Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
Remember how we were all fat positive for like 3 years? Remember that? And then Ozempic came out and we were like, just joking about all that. Just joking. I only thought fat was beautiful before I knew there was a cure for it. But if there's a cure, no, clearly it's gross. We weren't really fat positive. We were exercise negative. That's what.
Good morning. It's Thursday, Hockey Thursday, March the 20th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and the Boys of Winter. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in, all I want to be in the number, oh, when the saints go marching in, and when the sun refuse to shine, and when the sun refuse to shine, all I want to be in the number, oh, when the saints go marching in, and when the moon do red with blue, and when the moons do red with blue, all I want to be in the number, oh, when the saints go marching in.
Thank you. And now the headlines for Thursday, March the 20th. LA gang leader, music executive, accused of mafia-like crimes. Orange County judge accused of murdering wife speaks out, prepares for retrial. Los Angeles County homeless population decreases again, preliminary data shows. Southern California family's lawsuit alleges Six Flags roller coaster killed son. Suspect charged with murder after deputy killed during chase in Inland Empire. 11-year-old boy stabbed to death at hotel, mother in custody. Some taxpayers may still be able to get a $1,400 check from the IRS. 4-year-old child killed in South LA hit-and-run crash. And those were the headlines for Thursday, March the 20th. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the political corner.
Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk is here. All right. How much longer does Chuck Schumer have, Charlie?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. I hope a lot longer because he keeps on losing to Trump. Yeah. He's been great for us. Everything that President Trump's been asking for, this guy doesn't know how to fight. He doesn't know how to stand up against it. And the Democrats, look, it's so performative. They're shrieking. It's kind of part of their whole shtick. They're not used to having these kind of inter-party fights. For the last couple of years, you know what's always kept them together? Opposition to Donald Trump. That is no longer sufficient. It's no longer enough just to say that we are against Trump. President Trump is in the masterclass best form we've ever seen him. He's playing offense. He's operating with precision. His team is doing a phenomenal job. And Chuck Schumer doesn't even know how to deal with his own Democrat base. That was a phenomenal open, Jesse. And the one thing that Democrats don't mention, and Seth Moulton almost talked about it, almost is maybe there's something wrong with the stated core values of the Democrat Party. Maybe there's something wrong with the fact that Joe Biden did not work with Elon Musk to go rescue the astronauts that were stranded in space. Maybe there's something wrong with the fact that you guys did not go and vote in favor of no men and female sports. You say, hey, when there's a problem, you call a man. The Democrats can't even tell you what a man is.
So when you hear Walsh brag about how much of a man he is, what does that tell you?
I think there might be a little bit of a cope there, you could say. There's a little bit, he has to remind us how masculine he is, trying to not even be able to load a shotgun or fix a truck. I'll tell you one thing, the most masculine thing that someone can do in America today is stand up for women that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So while Tim Walz is going on Gavin Newsom's podcast, attacking me, by the way, saying that I'm a bad guy. Well, I'm sorry, Governor Walz. One thing that we don't have in common is, unlike you in Minnesota, I, every single day, am actually fighting for female privacy in locker rooms and that women's sports will not have men in them. Real men stand up for women when they're not able to stand up for themselves.
I've seen Charlie throw a football. You have an arm. And Coach Walz talks about how much he loves football. I've never seen him throw a football. Isn't that strange? If you were a big football coach and you're out on the campaign trail, maybe just throw it once. John Edwards, John Kerry used to throw it on the tarmac. He never threw the ball once.
I think it would be very similar to Barack Obama throwing a baseball. I don't think it would be a sight that would be easy on the eyes. That's right. I could throw quite a tight spiral. Hey, Governor Walz, let's go have a game of catch. We'll see how you do. Coach.
Charlie's doing podcasts with Newsom. Why don't you throw the pigskin with Walz? What do you say?
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the patriotic short.
Can you move?
No, both my legs are broken. Get your ass in here. See if we have a good stinger. Go to the asteroids compartment and get the grip stock in the BCU.
What?
Little cigar box looking thing with a pistol grip on it, little round thing, looks like a coffee can. Good. Go pop 3 latches on that missile, bring it over here. Put it in the dirt. Use the cigar box onto the missile. There.
Okay.
Snap it up. Pop that latch. Very good. Open up the side frame and square thing on the side.
Turning inbound.
No shit. Put it on your shoulder. Quick, 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 quick. Pull down the metal looking thing with your right thumb.
I got him in my sight.
Shoot him in the ass.
Snort that sucker.
And that was the patriotic short. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of motivation.
Life is hard. See, it's hard when you're 49 years old, been working on a job for 17 years, and they come in and tell you you're finished and give you 1 week severance pay. And you got to start all over again. It's hard when you're married and raising children and your children are crawling and your husband dies unexpectedly. It's hard handling just the tragedies of life. It's hard when you're working on something and you put everything you have in it and it doesn't work out. You lose your money and other people's money. It's hard. It was rough when I lost my job. And I could not find a job. It was humiliating and embarrassing, borrowing money. And then I couldn't pay the money back when I told them I would. That's rough. How people look at you, how they respond to you. It's very hard. It's humiliating. Here's what I discovered that happens to you in life, that you will go through things, and while you're going through them, you can't understand why it's happening to you. But after you go through it, you get back and you look at it and you say, oh, now I understand why I needed that lesson. Have you ever happened to you? Raise your hand. Has it ever happened to you that I couldn't understand it then? But after I got through it, then I saw that was preparing me for bigger and better things. As you go through the challenges of life and you look at it and embrace whatever comes to you, don't run from it. Step toward it. Don't try and duck it like most people do. See, most people want it easy. See, easy come, easy what? Easy go. See, but when you go at what you're going to deal with and you deal with the difficulties of it, when you handle those hard things close at hand, making those hard decisions right now that you don't want to make, learning those things that you don't like to do, but you know that in order for you to get where you want to go, this is one of the hoops that you have to flip through. And I'm saying to you, whatever you got to do it, because if you don't, Life is going to whoop you until you surrender and say, okay, all right. I cooperate. Okay, I learned. Okay. They had to wear me out a long time. So if it's hard, then do it hard. Now, how do you hang in there during the hard, difficult times? Les, you must have faith. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe in your abilities. You've got to believe in your service, your company, your ideas, unquestionably. You've got to have faith, and that faith gives you patience. That it's not going to happen as quickly as you want it to happen. A lot of things are going to happen that will catch you off guard. And so therefore you've got to deal with and handle it as it comes. And not only that, but that faith and patience drives you into action. You've got to keep moving and keep plugging away. In the Far East, they have something that's called the Chinese bamboo tree. The Chinese bamboo tree takes 5 years to grow. They have to water and fertilize the ground where it is every day. And it doesn't break through the ground until the 5th year. But once it breaks through the ground, within 5 weeks, it grows 90 feet tall. Now the question is, does it grow 90 feet tall in 5 weeks or 5 years? The answer is obvious. It grows 90 feet tall in 5 years. Because at any time, had that person stopped watering and nurturing and fertilizing that dream, that bamboo tree would have died in the ground.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of meditation. that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Daily Stoic.
Stoic joy. Trust me, real joy is a serious thing. Do you think someone can, in the charming expression, blithely dismiss death with an easy disposition? Or swing open the door to poverty, keep pleasures in check, or meditate on the endurance of suffering? The one who is comfortable with turning these thoughts over is truly full of joy, but hardly cheerful. It's exactly such a joy that I would wish for you to possess, for it will never run dry once you've laid claim to its source. Seneca, Moral Letters, 23.4. We throw around the word joy casually. I'm overjoyed at the news. She's a joy to be around. It's a joyous occasion. But none of those examples really touches on true joy. They are closer to cheer than anything else. Cheerfulness is surface level. Joy, to Seneca, is a deep state of being. It is what we feel inside us and has little to do with smiles or laughing. So when people say that the Stoics are dour or depressive, they're really missing the point. Who cares if someone is bubbly when times are good? What kind of accomplishment is that? But can you be fully content with your life? Can you bravely face what life has in store from one day to the next? Can you bounce back from every kind of adversity without losing a step? Can you be a source of strength and inspiration to others around you? That's Stoic joy. The joy that comes from purpose, excellence, and duty. It's a serious thing, far more serious than a smile or a chipper voice.
And that was the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Thank you. And now, Padre Pio.
Saint Pio had a very special dream in 1916, which happened to be the Feast of the Holy Rosary. He found himself at the window of the choir stalls of the little church in San Giovanni Rotondo, and on the square in front of this was an enormous crowd. Leaning out of the window, he asked them who they were and what they wanted. In unison, the crowd shouted at the top of their voices they wanted him dead. Pio realized that they were all devils and returned to the choir stalls to pray. The Holy Mother immediately came to him with a grief-stricken maternal glance and determined gestures. She placed in his hand a weapon, saying to him that he will win with it. Pio then took it to the window of the choir stalls, and in a flash, all those people fell dead to the ground. Shortly before his death, St. Pio expressed his last wish to his spiritual children, to love Our Lady and make her loved and always recite the Holy Rosary.
And that was St. Padre Pio. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "The foundation of any culture, the source responsible for all its manifestations, is its philosophy. What does modern philosophy offer us? Virtually the only point of agreement among today's leading philosophers is that there is no such thing as philosophy, and that this knowledge constitutes their claim to the title of philosophers." Unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter Our Cultural Value Deprivation from the book The Voice of Reason. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, gaslighting.
Gaslighting is a type of manipulation that occurs in abusive relationships. It is when the abuser makes the victim question their sense of reality and their sanity. For example, the abuser would do something abusive, like call the victim a bad name. Then the victim would get mad, as any normal person would, and then the abuser would convince the victim that they're just too sensitive. And in the end, the victim would find themselves apologizing to the abuser even though they didn't start the problem in the first place.
And that was gaslighting. Sound like anybody you know? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Ashley Webster in for Stu Varney.
Hey, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow. Ashley Webster is in for Stuart this morning. Varney and Company takes it away. Ashley.
Hey, good morning, Maria, and good morning, everybody. Yes, indeed, I'm Ashley Webster in today for Stuart Varney. Let's get right to it. A new Fox News poll reveals a surge in support for President Trump and the Republican Party, with approval ratings at an all-time high. Trump is also, by the way, gaining ground among key voter groups, including women and black voters. Today, President Trump is expected to sign an executive order to abolish the Department of Education, which will shift control of education back to the states. Trump will also make history by becoming the first sitting president to address a cryptocurrency conference. His remarks will be delivered by pre-recorded video at the Digital Assets Summit being held here in New York City. And all of this comes just weeks after he signed an executive order establishing the U.S. strategic, I can't say it, Bitcoin reserve, with the administration committed to building up the nation's Bitcoin holdings. A lot to talk about with Bitcoin. Meantime, the Fed lowering its economic growth forecast to 1.7%, down from 2.1%, but raising its inflation outlook to 2.8%, signaling concerns about potential stagflation. We'll talk about that. But despite these changes, the Fed still expects to implement 2 rate cuts this year. We'll see. Trump says the Fed should be cutting rates to ease the economy's transition to his tariffs. Taking a look at the pre-market, lots of red on the screen. Initially, we saw a boost to the markets after hearing from Mr. Powell yesterday, but now uncertainty back in. As you can see, the Dow off nearly 200 points, the NASDAQ down 142 in the pre-market. Let's take a look at the 10-year Treasury yield if we can. That too moving lower quite a bit, down 5.6 basis points to 4.18%. Meanwhile, take a look at the 2-year Treasury yield. That too down nearly 3.5 basis points at 3.94. On the show today, Governor Tim Walz openly rooting for the downfall of Elon Musk and Tesla's stock. How wonderful. But records show Minnesota's state pension fund, oh, by the way, holds over 1.6 million Tesla shares, with an additional 211,000 shares in its non-retirement fund as of June 2024. I wonder if Mr. Waltz knows that. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi says more arrests are coming in widespread Tesla attacks, and says the DOJ is now looking at the funding behind those attacks. It is Thursday, March the 20th. Varney and Company, about to begin.
And that was Mr., well, whatever his name is. Anyways, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit more Ashley Webster.
Thanks, Ashley. Thank you. All right, now this. Activist group Greenpeace has been found liable for, I think it's hundreds of millions of dollars linked to the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. Madison, exactly how much are they being told to pay?
They are being told to pay $667 million in damages. That is for defaming the Dakota Access Pipeline, and this is all connected back to the protest that happened around 8 years ago. The protest lasted for months. Thousands of people attended. The energy company, Energy Transfer, accused Greenpeace of inciting the protest and encouraging violence, which damaged the company's reputation. But environmentalists say this is an intimidation tactic to stop their attempts to prevent new oil and gas drilling. They're undeterred. Greenpeace says they plan to appeal, but I see this, and I wonder if those Tesla protesters are going to note what's happening here.
I doubt it.
So I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled that these people won the judgment that they did. I'm so glad. I'm a little bit surprised. I didn't think that a jury would side with, an oil and gas company, but they did. This is justice. Greenpeace is whining about how, this will put us out of business. Thank God. It's about damn time. Greenpeace has created nothing. They've done nothing. All they've been is a pain in the tuchus for decades. I am so glad that they got this judgment. I'm glad it's as big as it is, and I certainly hope that this is the end of Greenpeace. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now an article from the American Thinker, 312 is 323 the next time around. And it's by Silvio Canto Jr. We don't know for sure, but 11 electoral votes could be turning red when we count them in 2032. What am I talking about? Well, it's the census, or that thing that we do every 10 years to count the population. Check this out from Nate Moore. Quote, estimates from the American Redistricting Project predict that California is on track to lose 3 House seats and 3 electoral votes after 2030's reapportionment. New York could drop 2 seats. Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Illinois all might lose a seat. Meanwhile, Texas and Florida are each projected to gain a whopping 4 seats. Idaho and Utah, too, will tack on an additional seat. Notice a pattern? The states projected to gain representation and an electoral college boost are overwhelmingly Trump states. The states projected to lose representation are Harris states. If we exclude the battlegrounds of Arizona, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, red states will add 10 electoral votes and blue states will lose 9 electoral votes ahead of the 2032 election. These projections, of course, might shift over the next few years. The roster of swing states could change too. Nothing is set in stone, but if the numbers hold, the electoral impact could be disastrous for Democrats. Unquote. True that nothing is set in stone, but this looks likely. The chief problem is that more people are moving out because of the high cost of living, crime, lousy public schools, and environmental regulations that make doing business impossible. By the way, the high cost of living includes taxes, another problem. Will Democrats get the memo and start making their states hospitable again? I don't know, but that's what they have to do to stop the bad news from coming from the next census. And that was Silvio Canto Jr. in the American Thinker. 312 is 323 the next time around. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off with The Boys of Winter.
The Third Period. Chapter 7. Short End of the Shift. A few minutes before the game, Herb Brooks made a recruiting trip. He didn't have to go far. He found Dr. George Nagabods and called him into his office and handed him a stopwatch. Nagabods had known Brooks since 1958. When Nagabods, an immigrant from Latvia, was the new team physician for the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, and Brooks, a fleet forward, was an import from across the Mississippi in St. Paul. The friendship spanned 3 decades, hundreds of players, and 3 national championships. And if Nagabods had learned anything, it was to expect the unexpected from Herb Brooks. "Doc, we have to have our legs," Brooks said. "We need short shifts. It's the only way we can beat them. No shift can go more than 35 seconds, at least 10 seconds shorter than a typical shift. If somebody is on the ice for longer than that, I want you to tug on my sleeve." Nagabods, a short, balding man in a brown blazer and glasses, stood behind the bench and followed orders. "I didn't even get to see the game," Nagabods said. "I was too busy looking at the watch." Not that he minded helping the cause. He had a history with the Russians, and it wasn't pleasant. Nagabods lost his home, his education, and very nearly his life when Joseph Stalin's troops invaded Latvia in June 1940. He was forced to withdraw from the University of Riga and get a job loading wood at a freight station. A year later, there was a mass deportation of Latvian dissidents to Siberia. The Nagabodses were on the list because Nagabod's father was a leader of the resistance. If George hadn't been off playing a basketball game on the other side of Riga, the capital, he might have gone to Siberia and never come back. The family fled to Germany, moved to the States in 1951, and now, all these years later, the Russians were coming again in Lake Placid. After we were ahead at the end of the second period, We were already celebrating, Valery Vasiliev told Nagabods later. Nobody can skate with us in the third period. That had long been accepted as hockey gospel. With Nagabods on the watch, the American players went all out for their 35 seconds, sometimes 40, then hopped off. On one comparatively long Russian shift, center Vladimir Petrov had a face-off with Johnson, another with Broughton, and a third with Pavlich. He knew Nagabods from various international competitions. He caught the doctor's eye and asked in Russian, "Что такое? What is going on?" "Sprashika ваша тренера," Nagabods replied. "Ask your coach." In the opening minutes of the period, Ken Morrow made a rare end-to-end rush, carrying the puck to the right of Vladimir Mishkin, but could find nobody in front to connect with. The Soviets broke out, but couldn't build a threat either, and soon defenseman Dave Christian was controlling the puck directly behind Jim Craig, starting up ice, a sure-handed breakout up the middle. Of all the personnel decisions Brooks made, none was more inspired than switching Dave Christian from forward to defense. Brooks initially made the move in December after Bobby Suter broke his ankle and they needed another defenseman. Christian had played some defense in high school when he would go back to the blue line to take a break, then would play 40 or 42 minutes of a 45-minute game. He had never played defense at this level and never would again. He was probably the only player on the team capable of making such a switch, and he did it with no perceptible angst. If it was good for the team, it was a no-brainer as far as Dave Christian was concerned. "I would have thought it would be totally scary," said Neil Broughton, his roommate and best friend on the team and fellow Northwestern Minnesotan. But he never said a word about it. Dave was the ultimate team player. Suter was the same way. The only Wisconsin Badger on the team, other than Mark Johnson, Suter eventually made it back from his injury, but wasn't near full strength. A pugnacious defender who played beneath a thatch of wayward, straw-colored hair, Suter had fast skates and a feisty temperament, and, at 5 feet 10 inches and 170 pounds, relished taking on bigger guys. He specialized in mayhem, which explains how he came to leave Wisconsin as the school's all-time leader in penalty minutes. Suter would whack you when the officials weren't looking, kick your skates out, yap non-stop. His little brother Gary followed him to Wisconsin and became an NHL All-Star, and his son Ryan is a rookie millionaire, having left Wisconsin after his freshman year and signing with the Nashville Predators, the club that made him the top defenseman selected in the 2003 NHL draft. Bob had his own modus operandi, a guy who was equal parts red-faced puck rusher and blue-line troublemaker. He was an abrasive little son of a bitch, Gary Suter said. He always had people chasing him around the ice. He was the sort of guy you hated playing against and loved having him on your team. Suter played a solid game in the rout of the Czechs, but his gimpy ankle curtailed his mobility enough that Brooks did not use him against the Russians. Suter spent the game at the end of the bench in a snit, but kept it to himself for the good of the team. Toughing things out was nothing new to him. Once, after a morning skate during his Badger career, Peter Johnson accidentally sliced Suter's toe with his skate blade amid some locker room hijinks. The toe was partly detached. Suter told the team doctor to stitch it up. He did. Suter didn't miss a game. "No big deal," Suter said, before getting on a Zamboni to resurface Capitol Ice Arena, the rink he owns just outside Madison, Wisconsin. In the arena lobby is a store called Gold Medal Sports. For some 2 decades, Suter has coached youth teams with the Madison Capitals, a program started by his father. The mayhem has stopped, but Suter still lives a rink-centered life. Lou Vero likened Christian to a Picasso on ice, and it was a widely shared opinion. Christian didn't just have speed, he had the ability to accelerate, to create space, to read the flow of a game before almost anyone else. He was a defenseman with a centerman's psyche, a playmaker whose offensive skills put enormous pressure on defenses. In the upset of the Czechs, he saved a goal by clearing a puck that had trickled through Jim Craig's pads. Then he set the tone for the third period with an early rush, splitting two defenders, going in on goal, getting off a shot even as he got hooked and slammed into the goaltender. Phil Vercoda knocked in the rebound, and the rout was on. If anybody on the U.S. team had an Olympic pedigree, it was Christian of War Road, Minnesota, in the state's northwest corner, 6 miles of forest and field from the Manitoba border. When one of his uncles was giving directions to a visitor, he said, "Come down from Canada and make your first left." Christian was born on May 12, 1959, which made him 9 months old when his father, Bill, scored 2 goals, including the game winner, the last time the Americans beat the Soviets in the Olympics, in another semifinal in Squaw Valley, California, in 1960. Bill's line mate and brother, Roger, took it from there, scoring 4 goals against the Czechs the following morning. Another brother, Gordon, competed for the 1956 U.S. team that won the silver medal in Italy. Bill and Roger Christian were Olympians again in 1964 in Innsbruck, where they teamed with Herb Brooks in a tournament that wasn't so inspired. The United States went 2-5 and lost to the Russians and Czechs by an aggregate score of 12-2. When they returned to War Road and their lives as carpenters, Roger's brother-in-law, Hal Baca, suggested the idea of a company selling hockey sticks by hockey players. And so Christian Brothers, Inc. was born. Dave Christian played 15 solid years in the NHL. He scored 7 seconds into his first shift with the Winnipeg Jets and was the only player in the game that whole time with his own brand of stick. "I get pretty good service," Christian liked to say. At their peak in the mid-1980s, Christian Brothers was turning out 500,000 sticks a year. The company fell on hard times when mega manufacturers such as Easton began marketing graphite and composite sticks, and it closed shop briefly in 2003 before getting bought out and reopening. Even now, when you call their 800 number, you don't hear the captain and Tennille when you're on hold. You hear a piece of the audio tape from the 1960 gold medal game. Marvin Windows is the big employer in town, but in a place that calls itself Hockeytown, USA, and is the proud home of the War Road Lakers, a well-known senior amateur team, Christian Brothers is the business that speaks the language of the locals. War Road, population 1,722, is 358 miles from the Twin Cities, but only 88 miles from Thief River Falls. Sited on the shore of Lake of the Woods, a wannabe Great Lake with 65,000 miles of shoreline, 14,000 islands, and a width that stretches to 55 miles at one point, War Road is a place with 7 police officers offering 24-hour service, according to the Chamber of Commerce, terrific fishing, and sufficient ornithological interest to warrant a weekly birder update on the area website. If birds don't do it for you, maybe the Aurora Borealis, Northern Lights, will. Originally a Chippewa Indian settlement, War Road for years was subject to attack from the nearby Sioux, who coveted the Chippewas' rice fields and invaded by canoe on the Red and Roseau rivers so often that their route and the village became known as the War Road. Dave Christian learned to skate on a frozen river and learned well. He starred on the high school team, regularly dueling with his buddy Neil Broughton, the star of Roseau High School down Highway 11. The two parted ways in college, Christian going off to North Dakota after Brooks offered him only 3/4 of a scholarship. By his sophomore year, he was good enough to get drafted in the second round by Winnipeg and to score 2 goals to push North Dakota past Brooks's Gophers in the WCHA final. The second goal was an open netter. Christian came down one on nobody, stopped in front of the goal, and wound up and blasted a slap shot into the empty goal. It was at least partly for Herb Brooks's benefit. Some of Christian's Olympic teammates kiddingly nicknamed him Coho after the rival Finnish stick company. Christian was quiet, but he played along. Before the Czech game, he arrived in locker room 5 early and made wings for his helmet using cardboard, tape, and a clothes hanger. Then he went out and flew around the ice. On another game day a few years earlier in Houghton, Michigan, North Dakota coach Gino Gasparini was out for a walk when he saw a couple of police cars with lights flashing in front of the team's hotel. A few stories above, Christian and a couple of teammates were leaning out the window firing snowballs, provoking a call to the law. Christian seemed most content hanging around Broughton, his Northwest connection, 2 prodigious talents with undersized egos. They roomed together in the Olympic Village, played video games together, and made runs to McDonald's together. Christian isn't in Warroad anymore, having moved to Moorhead, near the North Dakota border, but he's still a Warroad kid at heart and still spends his summers at the family cabin amid the pines and birches of northern Minnesota on Upper Bottle Lake. Bill Christian was in Lake Placid with a stock of extra sticks, never knowing if there might be some business to drum up. "It was as good as anything there is in my life," he said once in describing the thrill of seeing his son carry on the Christian Olympic torch. "I just don't have the words to explain it." Dave Christian used to read his father's scrapbook as a kid and dream about being in the Olympics himself. He doesn't really have words for it either. To have that come true, to be in that position playing against Russia with my father and my uncle in the stands, for me, it was as impossible and far-fetched a dream as you could have. Christian came up ice smoothly into the neutral zone where he saw Pavlich darting toward the Soviet blue line on his left. Christian put the puck on his stick and Pavlich slipped through 2 Russians and skated in deep, momentarily losing control when Sergei Makarov took a whack at his stick and the puck skipped ahead into the end boards. Pavlich got it back and hit Harrington behind the net, but neither a shot nor a real threat came of it, and soon Vladimir Golikov was carrying it out. The pace of the game seemed to be slowing, the action disjointed. With just over 4 minutes gone, robust forechecking by the United States had throttled the Russian attack, and O'Callaghan took the puck behind the U.S. net. He slipped a pass by Valery Harlamov to Strobel on the right side. Out the Americans came, Strobel centering to Wells, who pushed it over to Verkota on the left. Verkota, a former state discus champion at Duluth East High School, was a powerful physical presence, broad-faced and broad-shouldered, a 6'2", 195-pound winger who could pound opponents and the books with equal facility. At the U, he was a decorated student who was twice the recipient of the John Mayasich Award, presented to the team's top student athlete. He'd grow a bushy beard as soon as hockey season was over and take on a mountain man look, Grizzly Adams with a bandana, and was regularly mistaken for being the team's goon, which he definitely was not. During the Herbies in the Dark game in Norway, Brooks sent Verkota out to get physical with a Norwegian player who the coach thought was cheap-shotting people. Verkota fought the guy, but forgot to drop his gloves. "Way to dust his clock, Phil," the guys teased. Strobel went hard to the net, and Verkota slid a cross-ice pass in front. Sergei Starakov, a thick-bodied defenseman, skated back with the swift Strobel and was able to get his stick on the puck and break up the play. The Soviets controlled, and Petrov, the 32-year-old center, carried up ice, Wells hounding him and prodding him with the stick the whole way, rarely more than the width of a puck away. If Herb Brooks wanted him to check, Wells was going to check, with vigor. Bow-legged and thick-chested, Mark Wells looked a little like a barrel on skates when he headed down ice, low to the ground, accelerating fast, his stride a muscular stick-swinging roll. At 5 feet 8 inches and 175 pounds, he was sturdy in body and stout in disposition, a kid with Chippewa ancestry who played with no reservation and was almost impossible to knock off his skates. Wells was a good enough scorer to pile up 83 points in 45 games in his senior year at Bowling Green, but Brooks already had Mark Johnson, Neil Broughton, and Mark Pavelich playing center, each of them a mite-sized maestro. Brooks put Wells on the fourth line of the Olympic team, and as much as Wells wanted to prove to Brooks that he could be as dynamic as the others, he knew this wasn't the time to engage him in debate. "I don't care if you don't score one goal," Brooks told Wells. "I need you to be my defensive center man. I need you to shut people down." Wells, in truth, was very nearly not on the team at all. 4 months before Lake Placid, he suffered a hairline fracture in his ankle after stepping in a hole at the end of a training run in Norway with Craig Patrick. Brooks doubted that Wells could make it back, and that he was the ideal fit for the team besides. Wells had his headstrong moments and could get easily frustrated. On a train ride during the autumn swing through Europe, he got into a spirited wrestling match with roommates Jim Craig and Ken Morrow because Wells insisted on having the bottom bunk. He was a kid who seemed to have an answer for most everything, clinging to a sometimes unbending conviction that his hockey ideas were right. His stubbornness served him well in his year with the Junior Red Wings in 1975, a season spent fending off derision, and worse, from Canadian teams and fans. One night, 2 opponents mugged Wells, then 5'6" and about 140 pounds, and beat him up so badly he wound up in the hospital and had to wear a face shield for weeks afterward. Brooks loved Wells's grit, and there was no question that his squatty bursts of acceleration made him perfectly suited for the coach's system. But was it worth the maintenance, dealing with Wells's retorts and overzealous desire to prove he belonged? "He wasn't the easiest guy to coach," said Ron Mason, Wells's coach at Bowling Green. "He had his own way of doing things. He was hard to get through to sometimes." There were other forwards, Ralph Cox of the University of New Hampshire and Dave Delich of Colorado College were 2 of them, who were more natural goal scorers. During one game on the tour, Brooks tapped Wells's shoulder and told him to play right wing. Wells informed the coach he was a center, not a wing. Brooks shot him a cold stare and was of a mind to ship him out right there. Mark Wells was a super-duper hockey player and one of the nicest kids you could ever meet, but sometimes he was his own worst enemy, said Gail Cronk, the co-founder, along with Don, father of Ken, Morrow, of the Eastern Michigan Hockey Association, and a long-time mentor for Wells. "He could have been in the NHL for a long time. He was that good. He just had a knack for ticking people off. When you played on a Herbie Brooks team, you played what position he told you. Mark thought he was right, but I told him, 'Mark, that don't mean nothing because you are not the coach.'" Wells was raised in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, 35 miles northeast of Detroit, in a 900-square-foot home that was scarcely different from all the other 900-square-foot homes in town, boxy and brick. It was a working-class town, and the Wellses were working-class folk. His paternal grandmother worked as a riveter at the bomber plant in Ypsilanti, Michigan, during World War II, one of the few women around to take on such an occupation. After the war, she worked on the line for General Motors, making sideboards and earning $41 a week.
And that was the next chapter of The Boys of Winter, the story of a coach, a dream, and the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team by Wayne Coffey. Back in a minute. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.